Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And before we get into the episode this week, we have decided to do a section called Ask Joy. Now, some of you have submitted questions to Ask Joy, but this week I thought I would ask Joy a question. So, I've been giving this a lot of thought, but Joy, if you had to have a pet that was not a cat or a dog or like a domestic pet, you know, some people have a rabbit or something like that. Outside of the realm of domestic pets, if you had to have an exotic pet, what pet would you have?
A giraffe.
Okay.
I've thought about this. So it's weird that you say this. So hear me out. I bought a game yesterday to play on the computer. I was playing it last night. It's called Build a Zoo. And I was building a zoo. And so far, all I have is bunnies. And I have... what's the other animal? I don't know. Some goose. That's what I got. And I've been so sad because I haven't gotten a giraffe. Or the other one would either be a giraffe or a zebra. Those are my top animals.
Okay.
I was going to say turtle, but that's really domesticated. And people have turtles, so it's not really that cool. Maybe like a giant sea turtle. I don't know if you can get those.
Yeah, a sea turtle is not practical to have. I mean, a giraffe really as a pet that you would have yourself is completely impractical. Because where are you going to put it, for one?
Okay, so this story is just going to get weirder and weirder. So I used to have this dream, and I would talk to Charlie. I talk in my sleep, Tim. That doesn't shock anyone who knows me because I never shut up. But anyway, so I used to have this dream. There was a giraffe. His name is Fred. And I don't remember why I had Fred, but he wore a really long red polo.
Well, it would have to be a long polo because, I mean, the giraffe would have a long neck.
Yeah, but in my sleep, sometimes I would talk about Fred the giraffe. So Charlie asked me, well, where is Fred? And I said, well, he's in Texas. It's the only state big enough for him. Like, giraffes can't be in any other state. There you go.
Okay, well, there we are. Well, I can just bookend this with when I was at primary school, at Grove Road School in Hounslow, on Grove Road, Hounslow, of course, for you bingo card listeners out there. I had a friend, I'm going to name and shame. I had a friend, his name was Vipin Sagoo.
Okay.
And he was, a friend that you have when you're 5 or 6 years old. And he liked tall tales. And I remember him telling me on multiple occasions, in the back garden of his house, he had dolphins.
Yeah, because there's so much seawater in Hounslow.
Yeah, I mean, Hounslow, for people in the UK, know exactly what Hounslow's like. If you've never been there, it is a suburban area on the outskirts of London, very built up, lots of terraced houses, lots of sort of factory type stuff and shops and things like that, and not a lot of green spaces. Certainly nowhere really big enough to have a personal pool for dolphins. And I remember telling my parents about Vipin Sagoo's dolphins, and they were like, no. And I said, no, he says it honestly. He says he has dolphins in his back garden.
So did you ever go look to see if there really were dolphins, Tim?
No, I don't think I ever went around his house.
When do you feel bad if he's listened to this podcast now and it turns out he has pictures of said dolphins? There's just a really giant pool in his backyard that he kept a dolphin in.
Maybe he just had like a fish pond with like koi carp or goldfish or something like that. And he called them his dolphins. But he was very adamant about these dolphins.
Well, he was little, Tim, and people say weird things when they're small.
That is very true. He probably doesn't even remember it, but I've got a memory like a steel trap, so I remember everything like that.
That's funny. Well, I mean, he could send him to Texas. They've got plenty of room, apparently, to Joy.
Well, there we are. If I ever meet up with him, maybe I'll tell him he needs to go to Texas if he wants to fulfill the dolphin dream.
There you go. All right.
Well, there we are. Okay, so I thought I'd do a quick CD of the week. I did say that it was going to be a YouTube exclusive, but I thought I'm mixing it up. I don't care. It's our podcast. We can do what we like.
Tim's a rebel.
Yeah, exactly. Rebel since 74, Joy, let me tell you.
Rebel without a cause, but continue.
So here we are. This is a CD of the week. And we spoke about this on a previous episode, so I thought I would have it as CD of the week. And this is Jamiroquai's Traveling Without Moving.
We had a very long discussion about that music video.
Yeah. So are you familiar with any other tracks on here apart from that one song?
Honestly, that was his main hit in America. I couldn't tell you another song off the top of my head.
Well, you've got the track that we spoke about the video is Virtual Insanity.
Mm-hmm.
We have the track Cosmic Girl, which reminds me of being in a nightclub in the south of France, which is not... Well, France is cool. I've been to France many times, but me being in a nightclub is not really my scene. So I have a very vivid memory of being in this nightclub in France while Cosmic Girl was playing. There's a song called Use the Force. High Times is on here.
So is he from the UK?
Yeah, they're a British band. The singer and leader of Jamiroquai is a chap called J.K.
That's what it was. Okay. I wasn't sure. All right.
And, you know, I think some of the backing band has changed. I think the bass player changed, who was one of the key figures in Jamiroquai. But they've got a number of albums out. I mean, this is a little bit more kind of jazz funk, Stevie Wonder-y type thing. As they went along, I mean, this is from 1996. As they went along, they started embracing that dance sound just a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I associate them with. But to be fair, like I said, I don't know that any of the other songs they had, and I could probably give it a Google. I will later, but I can't think of any song off the top of my head that was popular on the charts. So I don't know that a lot of their other songs really made it here. I always kind of thought of them or them, because it's not one person, as a one-hit wonder.
So the interesting question for you, the song Canned Heat, which is famously from Napoleon Dynamite, the bit where he's doing his dance moves at the end of that film, was that not a hit?
Not to my knowledge. I think that's the first time I ever heard it.
Because I don't think it was a massive UK hit, but I think it's certainly something that was in the charts at the time.
Let's see. Canned Heat, right?
Yep.
Let's see.
Joy is literally giving it a Goog live on air.
I'm trying to figure out, okay. Wikipedia, 1999, so I would have been 9 years old. The peaked at number 4 on the UK singles chart.
Okay.
The song was then later used in Napoleon Dynamite. I don't think it was here. No.
Maybe it wasn't even released.
No, it says that it was on the, all I see is the UK pop charts. Dance club charts, actually.
Well, there we are. And yet another artist, which is maybe considered a one-hit wonder in the US, but had many hits and many songs and albums elsewhere.
I find that interesting how certain artists just don't, I don't know if I feel like it's probably a combination of maybe they just their sound didn't register. They weren't marketed well here. Maybe they weren't interested in coming here. Combination of all the above.
Maybe. I remember one time I visited here before I lived here. I had MTV on in the hotel room, and they were going on about the greatest one-hit wonders of all time. And they had a-ha's Take on Me. And I was like, hang on a minute, that's not a one-hit wonder. They had loads of other hits.
But for here, it pretty much was. I know that because I kind of went and, sought. What is the word I'm trying to seek them out?
You sought them out. You seek them out.
Whatever. I went looking for them, but I heard some other songs. But if you're just talking about just mainstream hits, it's just Take on Me.
Well, there we go. Anyhow, this is Jamiroquai. This is the CD of the week. I urge you all to check it out, and they are not a one-hit wonder.
There we go. Tim's just breaking all the barriers for all the UK artists who didn't make it over here.
maybe that'd be a great topic in the future. Is what's considered one-hit wonders in the US and nowhere else? I don't know.
Well, I think we talked about it once. I was going through a list and somebody had Rod Stewart listed as a one-hit wonder, and everybody was like, comedy, what?
Hey?
What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Anyway.
Okay, so we are going to get into the episode this week. It is my turn to pick the topic. Now, I've gone through a few different things recently. I've done MTV Awards and we've done the comments, and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, I'm going to do something, again, just a little bit different. We did the fruit. So it's a similar theme to the fruit, but not quite. So this week, I'm going to go into the topic that I'm going to call Going Green. And all of these songs either have green in the title, green in the artist, or they have a vague green connection.
Tim's very keen on these like topics of finding like one intrusive thing and just branching out. Because I never do that. I never think to think, green. But it makes it interesting to see which ones we come up differently. So that's kind of cool.
Exactly. So that's it. I try and pick different topics every time. I've got another one which is brewing, and I've already sent the homework to Joy, so that'll be coming up in a few weeks. But we won't talk of it here. But I like to think of different things. So anyway, this week is going green. So I've got 16 songs here, but we probably won't get to them all on the episode. But I'll pick out the ones that I like, and we can discuss them. So I am opening with something that we discussed previously, but I'm going to bring it up again here. And that is Norman Greenbaum with his song Spirit in the Sky.
Which is a favorite of mine. Even though I'm not super religious, I love that song. It
is, and it's a good song. And it's also, as we discussed before, UK hospital radio, which is something which I made you aware of that you didn't even know existed when we started doing this. It's one of those songs that famously banned from UK hospital radio.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to know about what happens when I die when they leave me to rest because I'm walking into heart surgery. Well, I mean, they say that like the stress on the body before you do anything like that can have an effect on the anesthesia and stuff. So, I mean, it sounds silly, but there's probably some medical reasoning behind it too.
Probably. I think it's probably more to the point someone's lying in the hospital, maybe in a very bad way, and they don't want to be hearing all this stuff. If they're a person of faith, they have their beliefs of what's going to happen. But if you're just lying there, you don't want this kind of stuff bashing in your head to a 70s beat.
Well, and the other thing you got to take into account that not everybody laying in a hospital has these beliefs. So, there could be different people there.
Exactly. So, as I said, it's always famously banned from hospital radio. But, we're opening with a Spirit in the Sky.
Well, I just like the, what is it I like? I'm playing the song in my head. Obviously, we can't play the song. But it's kind of got a rhythmic sound to it. Or like a timing that's very almost... I mean, it is like a rock pop song, but it kind of has like almost like a Motown kind of thing and the way the rhythm of the song goes. Does that make sense?
Sure. And it has that guitar line going all the way through, which has a fuzz tone guitar sound.
And it's just the way the song flows that I think is what's so mesmerizing, or why I like it so much. It's just the flow of the song. It's not really what he's saying, because that's not just big of a deal for me. It's just like what you're saying, that guitar and the method in which it's being delivered, I guess.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So there's my 2 cents on Spirit in the Sky.
Okay. All right. So the next song, it doesn't have green in the title or green in the artist, but it has a strong green connection. And this is Scritti Politti and the song The Word Girl. Are you familiar with Scritti Politti?
None of those words mean anything to me. Is this a UK thing? Am I?
I think it probably is. It's from this particular song is from 1985, The Word Girl. And then they had another song called Would Bees, and there was a number of other hits by Scritti Politti. So it was a UK pop act of that era. So you have no knowledge or no information at all about Scritti Politti.
I've never heard that before. What's the green connection?
Okay, so the guy who is the lead singer and band leader of Scritti Politti, his name is Green.
Oh, well, my mom's maiden name was Green. I don't know if that helps.
Well, this is his first. This is his first name.
That's cool. I don't know that I've ever known anybody whose first name was a color.
Well, his real name is Paul Julian Strohmeyer.
Oh, is it a stage name?
Yeah, and then his mother got remarried, and he took the last name. So his new last name was Gartside, and he didn't want to be
Green Gartside.
Yeah, he didn't want to be called Paul anymore because there was lots of people called Paul in his class at school, and he was listening to a lot of Captain Beefheart and like Frank Zappa and sort of way out music, and he thought, wouldn't it be cool to give myself a name that nobody has? It's completely out there. So he decided to call himself Green, and I think Green actually is his legal name now.
I mean, I see no issue with it because technically my name is a word. If you want to get down to technicality, my name started out as a word.
That's true.
I mean, there are some other joys in the world, but it's not that common. But I'm trying to think if I've ever known anybody else who had I am disappointed it wasn't what he was born with. I was hoping that this kid was born green, but I don't know of anybody else who has a color for a name. I'm sure it exists. Well, maybe like Lilac. No, I don't know anybody by that name. Got nothing.
I think it's incredibly unusual. If anyone knows somebody who has a first name which is a color, and even a primary color or any kind of color, it doesn't matter.
We're not biased. We like all colors.
Exactly. But yeah, I thought it was unusual. I remember at the time he would appear on kids' TV shows as green, and I was like, that's a little bit out there.
I had an image of someone like wearing like physically like their skin was green, and then I remember that's his name. Now that would have been very Andy Warhol, Frank Zappa of him, who like dyed his skin green on top of going by green.
It would be like the Blue Man Group, but green.
He could and then you know what he could do? So if you were green all the time, Tim, you're a permanent green screen. So when you're on stage and stuff or when you're on camera, you can play around with that. You do like a permanent green screen.
Well, that's true, but you can do chroma key in any color you like. It doesn't matter.
That's true. But it's just the most common, Tim. Gosh, got to take all the fun out of it with your facts. Insert eye roll. Nothing though. Okay, speaking of green screens, I don't know if we've ever told this story on the No Name Music Cast, but there's a very funny story about me and Tim at a copier going to space at a green screen. So for some reason, and it wasn't for some reason, it was because I worked at HR. I was easy to grab, and I have at least a little bit of a personality that thought could do well on camera. Give or take, right, Tim?
Yes.
That was me setting my phone down, everybody. Don't freak out on Tim if there's a noise. But we recorded a lot of videos, like training videos and different things for our work. And I had been roped into one that never saw the light of day.
No, it's currently in the unreleased section of someone's network drive at work.
So Tim and I were supposed to go show how to use the new copier, I think, right? And then they were going to put us in outer space, that
was it, yeah. So the green screen thing, so it's like where I work and where Joy used to work, we make very good training videos. We have a guy we work with who's really good at that stuff.
Yes, it's not to insult him. It was just random.
Yeah, and as a result, we have some really nice cameras. We have green screens. We have audio recorders and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, drones. And some of that training videos and stuff, actually they do stuff for the state as well, and other organizations that are similar to where I work and Joy used to work actually use the services of the guy who does it, and he does really good work. So we'd made another training video about copiers, and it was a little controversial that some of the senior folks at our work didn't like this video for some reason or another. But anyhow, that's beside the point. But we was going to make a follow-up one that showed you how to do another function of this photocopier.
I think it was scanning or something.
Something like that. And as Joy said, we often would work together in training videos because Joy was always up for doing this stuff. I work with the guy who does the videos, and it's all came together nicely.
And I was easy to grab because I wasn't in like a front-facing customer type job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was decided that what we would do is put a green screen behind this brand new Canon copier and then shoot this footage of me showing Joy how to scan things to network folders and then have all of us floating around in outer space.
But for some reason that day, me and Tim were super awkward on camera. I don't know what it was. Like, if you watch the footage, it was not our normal chemistry when we're on camera. So we were already awkward. And then you add that to us in space, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah, it's. I must ask the person who does this stuff whether he still has the footage and whether he chroma keyed the space in the back. Yeah, I don't know. But I would like to see it. I don't think I've actually fully seen the whole thing. And Joy says, I mean, I do a podcast with Joy every week. We have a good rapport. This was not a good rapport.
I don't know what it was. Tim's like, now put the paper in it. I'm like, okay. I don't know. We just were off that day, and it was not our filming day. Now you know, me and Tim are making it in the movie. But like, we had recorded 2, 3 other videos together and never had that problem. But that day, it's just super weird. And so I remember when we got to filming, I'm looking at him, I looked at him and was like, was that awkward for you? And he's like, it was very awkward. I was like, okay, good. Well, that might be the worst footage ever.
Maybe what I should do is a bonus on the YouTube channel. Is if I can find it, I may post a clip. If I can convince the person who has the footage to let me post a clip, I may post a clip.
Oh, God. I don't know if I want to. I might not watch it, but our fans would probably love it. Go for it, fans. Listeners, whatever you want to call yourselves. Oh, God. All right. That had nothing to do with the song, but moving on.
Moving on. Okay, so we'll move on to our next Green-related song. And this is from Green Day. Are you familiar with Green Day, Joy?
I'm very familiar with Green Day. Continue.
Okay. So I've decided to choose the song Brain Stew. Is that a song of theirs you're familiar with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So the one that I've picked, the version of Brain Stew, this is the Godzilla remix. Now, they had Brain Stew on the soundtrack album of the film Godzilla that came out in 1998. And I remember this vividly, because in 1998, I went to Perth, Australia, and British Airways, who I flew with, they had Godzilla on their in-flight film.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this was before everybody had a screen in the back of the seats, and, you could choose what you wanted, and it was all interactive. It's like that you had like a TV every fifth seat that you could look up and see, and then you could plug in headphones and listen to it. So you really had no control or choice of what you wanted to watch. And when I was coming back, it was flying through the night, and they had this going. And all I remember is dozing and waking up and seeing a little bit of Godzilla, and then dozing and waking up and seeing a little bit of Godzilla.
The last time I flew was Greece, right before COVID happened, and I haven't flew since. I watched Tina Turner's documentary.
Oh.
I don't know. I can't think of anything else I watch. I am really bad at sleeping on flights, though, Tim. Even when you go to like the UK, it's the overnight ones where it gets super cold and like all the lights go off. I can't sleep. I don't sleep. I just can't. I was like probably going on 48 hours without sleep the last time I was on one. I debated on having my doctor medicate me.
I'm normally pretty good sleeping on flights. One thing I've found as I get older is I can't watch seatback TVs. It gives me motion sickness. So as a rule, if I'm traveling, I'll have my headphones on. I listen to a podcast, listen to music, I listen to an audiobook.
Smart.
But watching a screen, I find is not good for my motion sickness.
Well, what do you like about the song Brain Stew, to bring it back to our, even though you specifically took the Godzilla one? Is that the only reason, or was there something about the song you like?
Well, I like the song. It's got that really good riff that goes bam, 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 bam. Yeah, and the way that it's mixed is that when those stabs come in, it's completely silent. So they cut all the reverb trails off. So it's it punches really hard on each one of those. I
just had a thought, Tim. Isn't the first line of that song, I have trouble falling asleep, something about counting sheep? I think it's
something like that, yeah.
I didn't plan that, but when you were saying that, it was playing in my head when you're going bump up, and then I was like, wait a second. Irony. That wasn't on purpose, everyone. I just got it.
There we are. And the other thing I like about it as well is it has little Godzilla samples in it as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Godzilla's pretty good. I don't know that it's been a long time since I've watched Godzilla, though.
Yeah, I've never seen it all the way through. I've just seen bits and pieces of it over the course of a 20-odd hour flight or whatever it was.
Well, and it's like one of those movies that they use sampling of in different TV shows, talked about. I can't tell you for sure if I've ever watched it all the way through. I feel like I probably have, but who knows?
There we are.
I'm not going back and watching it now. I can tell you that. Don't care enough.
Well, anyway. There we are. Okay, well, let's move on to the next song away from our Godzilla friend. Okay. And this is from 1971, and this is a song I know you're definitely familiar with. And this is Al Green, Tired of Being Alone.
I love that song, and I love Al Green. Trying to think about that song, though. What do you like about that song, Tim? Everybody's always so big on Al Green's voice, but I always just think the way he flows his music, like the feel of the whole song is really good too.
Yeah, it has a very classic sound to it. It's got horns on it. It's that sort of classic soul R&B sound and feel. And like you say, his voice is, it's beautiful. The way he sings and he delivers the lines.
Yeah. And I think I don't know. Well, I think he was like a pastor at one time.
Yeah, because I've heard him described as the Reverend Al Green.
Yeah, and so I wonder if the way he flows his songs has something to do with like the way you deliver a sermon in some weird way.
Maybe. I mean, depending on what kind of church he was involved with, maybe there was singing or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, I could totally be wrong by that theory. I've never heard him. I don't even know 100% that he was, but I do think he did some gospel music and soul and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, as I said, I've heard him described as the Reverend Al Green.
Yeah, so I'm assuming they're not just giving him that term because he's a musician.
I don't know. Well, like Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, he's called the Reverend Willie G, and he's not really a reverend.
I mean, that's fair. I do know his real name is Albert.
Okay.
It's not actually Al, it's just what he goes by. His real name's like Albert, and then it's Green. And what's interesting is he has the E at the end of his Green. And my mom, because I said earlier, my mom's maiden name was Green. At some point in time, the E got taken off. Mm-hmm. And so you see a lot more white families. I hate to say this, it sounds bad, but a lot more white families have the Green without the E, and a lot more African-American families have the Green with the E. I don't know what it means, but it's just something you see.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, there you go. There's your fact of the day. If you win Jeopardy, I expect a 10%
10% cut.
And then I was sad, though. I'm actually sad about some of the stuff his family has done after he passed away.
Is it? I'm not familiar. Is it one of those things where they're the music riots and cashing in and all that kind of stuff?
Well, maybe he hasn't passed away. Maybe he's still alive. But there's something with has he passed away? Am I making that up? Tim, am I making up that he's dead? Let me Google that too. Real live stuff here, everyone.
I tell you what, Joy, this is you're having a goog so much tonight. I mean, it's unprecedented on this podcast.
Okay, he's still alive, but I thought I heard something about there was some stuff with his family and what they were doing with his estate that I was not a fan of. Seems like there was a lot of power grab stuff going on.
Talking of actually changing the subject completely, unusually for us. Talking of power grabs, have you heard this thing about Elvis?
What about Elvis?
So the name Elvis Presley, the trademark of his voice and the trademark of his image are owned by some kind of company that owns like copyrights of deceased artists. And they've sent cease and desist letters to all these Vegas chapels that do Elvis weddings.
I have seen that. I saw a headline, but I didn't read into it. It just seems silly to me at this point because it's like, I don't know. It seems like a power grab, right? Like
yeah,
it just
it's one
ridiculous.
thing if they decide they wanted a licensing fee, but now they're just saying you can't do it anymore. I don't understand what that's all about.
I mean, it sounds like maybe they got bought out by somebody else who's a stickler. Maybe they were bored. Maybe they're hoping they'll get some money out of it. I don't know.
But the article I read said that a lot of the Vegas economy is driven by weddings, and they said there's some silly statistic like 32% of all Vegas weddings have Elvis involved.
Well, I think but I don't know. For me, I don't think I'd want to take that away because I think he enjoyed Las Vegas. Like that was part of his livelihood. That's who he was as a person.
Sure.
Like it seems, I understand that they might think there's some negative connotations behind it, but I don't think so. I think that that's just who Elvis was as a person.
Yeah, and Hannah and I originally were going to get married by Elvis in Vegas, and the reason we didn't is that she had like the UK visa equivalent of a green card at the time, and we could have traveled to Vegas. It would have been fine, but it would have complicated visa applications down the line with more paperwork and more stuff, and we decided to get married in Hounslow instead.
I mean, that's fair. Yeah, so apparently Al Green is not dead, everyone. I take that back. But there is a whole lot of weird personal stuff going on, including someone throwing boiling hot water on him at one point.
Oh, that's not good.
Just discovered that. So sorry for you. I'm very sorry, Al Green, that happened to you. And I'm sorry I thought you were dead. My bad, everybody. I'll be here all week. All right, moving along.
Okay, so this next song, this is another song I have a feeling that Joy will have no knowledge of, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
So this is the song Green Door. Now, I'm sure you're probably familiar with the song Green Door.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, and the Green Door.
Yeah.
But this version is by Shakin' Stevens. Now, is Shakin' Stevens someone that you have heard of?
No. But I do know that song.
Well, this version is from 1984. And I remember this being a chart hit. I remember when this was on Top of the Pops. And in fact, when I heard this song for the first time, I didn't know it was an old song. I just thought it was a Shakin' Stevens song. And Shakin' Stevens was one of these kind of like retro rocker type things. He had that kind of 50s throwback type thing, and he had a big quiff, and he maybe would wear like the teddy boy outfit and that sort of things.
Very 80s.
Yeah, 80s calling back to the 50s.
Jeez. Yeah, that was a thing though for like 5 minutes, I think.
And there was another band called Darts as well that was similar to that. It had a guy in it called Den Hegarty, and Den Hegarty, of course, was on Tiswas, which is probably another program that you've never heard of.
Yeah, so it was the original's by Jim Lowe, and it was like the 50s.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that song. I mean, I'm aware. It's a cool song. I've never heard of the Shakin' Stevens. Now I kind of want to hear it because it sounds fun.
Yeah, it's pretty true to the original, but with a little bit of 80s production, I suppose.
I mean, I like the original though, so maybe I like the 80s, so I'll try them together.
There we are. Well, after the record this evening, Joy, you pull up a bit of Shaky, as he's known.
Oh, does he have any other songs?
He does, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
That's fair. I put you on the spot. Well, at least I knew the song. I don't feel so bad now.
There we go. Okay, well, let's move on to the next one. Now, this next one is a cover, but it's a famous cover that this band do. So This is by Judas Priest, and this is the Green Manalishi with the two-pronged crown. Now, of course, that is famously a Fleetwood Mac song. But even though they were a new wave of British heavy metal band, they covered it. And the version which I actually picked out for this record is from 1985, and they performed it at Live Aid.
And I've heard that version, and it's great.
It's cool. It's interesting that would be a song that they would pick to cover, because it's not an obvious pick for like a heavy metal, heavy rock band to pick.
But I like when heavy metal bands do that, because I think sometimes we think of them in just like, so I'm trying to phrase this very properly, because sometimes I don't think heavy metal bands or hard rock bands get praised for being as good at musicians as they are, because there's a lot of sound. You know, that whole thing about like hairography, where if you put a lot of hair in it and there's just so much moving, people don't notice things. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but it's a thing. So like with heavy metal bands, people don't necessarily maybe give them all the credit for their musicianship. So when they do have the occasional stripped back song that shows like their actual vocals and their ability to play other things, I think it's nice, because it reminds you to get where they are, they're probably pretty good musicians. You know what I'm saying? I think for the general public.
Sure. I would say a lot of heavy rock bands and metal bands are probably the best musicians out there as far as being virtuosos. I mean, like if you listen to, there's a genre of music called math metal, which is very similar to sort of Slipknot-esque thing, where it's diving in and out of different time signatures, and there's all that stuff going on. Now, to the casual listener, it just sounds like a din. But if you listen to it closely, like the virtuoso skills of the drummer and the bass player and the rhythms that the guitar players are playing and stuff like that, you know, they are great. And then, you know, and lead guitarists as well. I mean, you know, you have someone like Peter Green, for example, who's bringing it back to Fleetwood Mac. Yeah. Amazing guitarist, unique guitarist. The Edge, unique guitarist. Yeah. But neither of those people are virtuosos. You want to talk about virtuosos, you have to get into the genre of like heavy metal, heavy rock, because those guys or women or people or whoever's doing it are the ones that have those virtuoso skills.
So, and that's what I'm getting at. Like you were saying, to just the regular listener, sometimes it just seems like a whole lot of stuff all at once, right? Like there's so much going on, and the guitar's here, and then it's there, and then you get a little lost. But to be able to do that and do it well, and it not sound like craziness and sound like an amazing song, takes so much skill. So like with Judas Priest, when they did this performance, I thought it was cool. They picked something out of their norm, because it gives you that other side and reminds people, oh yeah, they can do so much because they're really talented.
Absolutely. Well, but there we
Okay,
go.
thank you for coming to my TED Talk, everyone.
Okay, well let me move on to another one. So let's do this one. So this is an artist that we've touched on previously, but this is from 1967. It's a live performance, and I have this on a live album, and I love this live album. And this is Tom Jones's live version of The Green, Green Grass of Home.
Which I liked. Remember, I brought up the fact that I liked it. It reminded me of the gospel music that I heard growing up. And then I gave it a Goog, and it turns out that's what they were going for. So I was right on the money.
Exactly. I must say that this live album I have, it's called From Las Vegas to London. Some of it is from Vegas, and some of it is from this Talk of the Town concert in London. And it's just classic late 60s Tom Jones. And it's him at his absolute 60s peak. The band are great. The arrangements are great. I just love it. I bought it from Amazon, and I think it's not so much that it's like a bootleg or a knockoff, but I don't think it's sort of part of the core Tom Jones catalog. I think it may be a couple of like old albums that were stitched together to make this one that was sold for £6 on Amazon once or something, that kind of thing.
Just another way to make some extra money, basically.
Exactly.
Combining things.
But I really like it, and I haven't been able to find it since, and I'm glad I still have the rip of the CD of it.
Well, if anybody knows where Tim can find it, the original he would like to purchase. If you have an Amazon store.
Well, it'll turn up in a thrift shop somewhere.
It will. He'll find it. And you know what, Tim? You're reducing, you're reusing, and you're recycling for the good of the world when you go to your thrift shops.
That's very true. I didn't quite think of it like that.
There was a TV show where they were saying reduce, reuse, and recycle earlier. That's the only reason that was to my head. Not related. But they were talking about there's a big push now for thrifting because we have so many products out in the world.
That's true. In fact, Sarah Petherick, she tagged me in something this week, and she was talking about it was a meme on Facebook, and it was it says, here's an idea, a party bus, but the party bus stops at thrift shops.
You would take Charlie, and I would lose every penny in my bank account. Tim, don't give him that idea. If you took Charlie on the party bus with you going to thrift shops, I would be homeless.
I would so get involved with that. But I mean, even like now, if we go anywhere that's slightly out the area, what I do is when I get there is I look for Goodwill and thrift shops.
Yeah, he does the same. And then we're like walking around and like, what did he buy? Okay, so most recently he was wielding and dealing with somebody on eBay right before this. There are these Australian iron. It's not cast iron. It's like a wrought iron from Australia that he found at a local Goodwill. And I mean, they're like really nice pans. Like I'm talking like professional, like heavy, like really nice. And, they can go over like open grills in the oven. It doesn't matter. But he found them for like next to nothing. And they're worth like $500.
Oh, wow.
Somebody just gave them to a Goodwill. He just found it recently. And somebody was writing. I know he had at least a few bids. And there was someone asking for additional photos because they want to make sure there was no warping. But yeah, he's got a good eye for that stuff.
Typically, my thrifting is buying CDs and occasionally records. That's about the only thing I buy.
Well, he does that too. But to be fair, I make it sound like all he does is buy and sell. But no, half the stuff is still in my house. And for those who know about the giant elephant, it has not sold. It's still in the garage. If you know, you know.
Well, Joy, your name on Zoom for the longest time was Joy Has a Giant Elephant.
I know. Well, it was at one point it was just has a giant. Okay, so everybody who doesn't know this, we used to do these group Zoom chats with some friends. And my husband, like I said, buys and sells, and he got a giant elephant. I mean, when I say giant, I mean, it's my size. We have photos. Tim, I'll put the photo on Instagram, mark this down as my thing. But like, I brought it on camera to show everybody how big it was. And like, there's pictures of me sitting there and everybody was laughing about them. Well, a few weeks later, we went into another Zoom and I changed my name to Has a Giant Elephant without Joy at the beginning. Well, they had some people who were trying to join the Zoom that weren't supposed to. So Ian was kicking him out and Ian almost kicked me out thinking I was one of them. And Tony was like, no, that's Joy. It's a giant elephant. So that's why it was Joy Has a Giant Elephant. I had to add the Joy for clarification.
There we are. Well, yeah, I think you should post a picture of that giant elephant because it's been a while since I've seen it as well.
Well, I have a picture, the picture of me sitting in front of it. Remember that I posted on the group chat? I'll put that one. It's like me sitting in front of it holding a drink, and you can tell how large it is. It's in my garage right now.
Marvelous. Okay, all right. Well, let's move this along with this vaguely music-themed podcast.
We haven't talked about music, but like 0.3%. All right.
Okay, so this one comes from 1962, another completely up-to-date, bang on the pulse song. And this is Booker T and the MGs and Green Onions.
I am familiar with that song, but that's random, Tim. I don't know the last time I even heard that song.
It's a great song. It's written by Steve Cropper, has Steve Cropper on guitar from the Stax House Band. Now, do you know the story of this song?
I don't think so.
So the Stax House Band used to record for a lot of different Stax artists. And of course, as with any like studio booking, you're allotted a certain amount of time to do it. But certainly back in these days, in the pre-digital days, you only had so much tape to complete what you wanted to complete. And they had whatever it was, 4 minutes of tape or 5 minutes of tape left. And this Green Onion song was a song that they used to jam on when they were sound checking or warming up. That kind of
that's
stuff.
cool.
But it had never been recorded because it was just a jam in the key of G. Mm-hmm. So they had like 5 minutes of tape and 10 minutes of the session left. And they said, oh, why don't we just jam out that song we do? So they played it. And it's all in one take. It's all live. And there we are. That's Green Onions. And it's that song which, you've heard 1,000 times.
Well, and that makes sense now thinking back, because I can see how that could be a good song to warm up with. Mm-hmm. Like, it's got that energy. Like you said, it's in the right key. It's in a common key. That's cool, though. And it makes sense why it's kind of like random. I don't know, in my brain, I don't know if the song makes any sense at all. But yeah, no, I had never heard that. I wonder if that's happened. I'm sure that's happened with other bands before. I always like when you hear a band say, we recorded this song because they forced us to, we didn't even like it. And then that one's the one that becomes popular.
Yeah, you hear that a lot where like someone will record an album and it's like, oh, we hated that song. We didn't think it was going to be any good, but the record company wanted to release it. And then it becomes a boom, biggest hit ever. Because
hits are like mathematical, and like there's a structure. You know what I'm talking about, Tim? Mm-hmm. Like for something to be a hit, there's a mathematical structure that you have to follow, and it's consistent. That's why they actually make the big deal about the Swedish pop, because they follow that structure to a T, and that's why they are able to make pop music so well. Mm-hmm. And so when the record company's hearing it, that's what they're hearing. Whereas the musicians, like, thinking about their music and like wanting the deep songs, you know what I'm saying, to be the big hits. But that's not what always sells, unfortunately. No,
and I think the people in sort of the record companies are doing this day in, day out. They listen to it and they're like, yeah, mm-hmm. that's the one. That's the one that will sell.
And I mean, and to their defense, they're right. Like, that's what sells. I mean, I remember when Lady Gaga's Poker Face come out, which was everywhere, right? I know you're not a huge but you even heard Poker Face, I'm sure, Tim, at some point.
I was DJing the breaks with my previous band, and I used Poker Face.
Exactly. Or Just Dance. Those were not her favorite songs. And she's a talented musician who can do, she's like studied piano, classically trained, but that was the song that sold. And they knew that. So that's the song that got put as a hit. There we are. It's true.
And that's the one that she was known for at that time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she's known for a lot of different things. And she was able to. And the good thing about it, I think that happens, I've seen it with her. I've seen it with Miley Cyrus and a few other artists, where they start their first album out and they put those songs out, but then they're able to kind of branch away from that and do things that are a little bit more about them. Mm-hmm. But that's how they get their name known and how they get that success very quickly right at the beginning. I'm sure there's some term for it that I don't know, or there's some like Hollywood secret there I broke. But there you go, everyone. If you're trying to make it in the music business, that's what you do.
There we are. That's a joy tip for you.
Yes.
You're temporarily bringing back the tip of the day feature.
I didn't mean to. Well, I guess it's tip of the week. We never decided. Anyway,
we never decided. We moved on from our tips to other things. So we rotate these ideas to keep it fresh.
All right. Well, I didn't mean to insert that. But what's the next song, Tim?
Okay. So this one, I have it here by two artists, and that's the song "Little Green Bag."
Okay.
Now, it was originally by the George Baker Selection from 1969, and I'm sure you've probably heard the original version of Little Green Bag. But the one that I wanted to focus on, yet again, was our friend Tom Jones. Now, this is from his album Reload.
Okay.
And Reload, as we've discussed before, was an album from 1999. And it was seen as a comeback of sorts where Tom recorded lots of songs with lots of contemporary artists. Like he did Burning Down the House, and he did it with the singer from the Cardigans. But but Little Green Bag was recorded with a band which I actually really like, which is the Bare Naked Ladies.
I like the Bare Naked Ladies too. That's kind of cool though, because I could see how that could work. I've never heard it, but I can hear how that might work.
Yeah, because they're kind of quirky and weird and cool and stuff.
And I mean, if you look back on the original, the George Baker, look at those haircuts. They were quirky and weird. I'm kidding, everyone. Like, I just remember he had like some bangs because they were like Dutch, maybe. I
think you're right. I believe they were European of some degree.
But I think they were Dutch, which means, styles and stuff were different, of course. But I remember there's like a horse in the music video, and he's got some hair. And that's really all I remember. And that doesn't tell anyone anything what happens in the music video. There's a horse and there's hair.
Now, did the horse have a wig, or did the horse had long flowing hair?
Well, I wasn't talking about the horse's hair. I don't remember the horse's hair. I just remember the guy's hair. The dark hair, and then there was at one point, like I think he had like these tiny little weird bangs. I make strange associations if you haven't picked up on that, and that's kind of all I remember. But I could hear how the Bare Naked Ladies could do something cool with that. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, I'd say they're not one of my favorite bands, but whenever I listen to their music, I'm never disappointed.
Yeah, and I mean, like the jump to the left and then turn to the right part in the middle of the song. I can see how you could make that kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I need to go find that because that sounds pretty interesting. I don't really think of the Bare Naked Ladies, though, as like... So there's like these bands like from the mid-'90s, like the Bare Naked Ladies, Hootie and the Blowfish... I'm sure there's someone else in that genre, that area. What's the one? The Dave Matthews Band.
Dave Matthews Band.
Those bands I always just associate as a very small scale of time in the middle of the 90s and nothing else. I don't know why, but that's where my brain sees them at all times.
I certainly Hootie and the Blowfish, because if you go to Columbia, South Carolina, which is the home of the world's largest fire hydrant, if you didn't know that, they just down the road from there, they have a Hootie and the Blowfish art installation. And it's on Hootie and the Blowfish Boulevard, or Hootie and the Blowfish Lane or something. And it's like this big metallic like structure that looks like trees. And it has a plaque from the artist saying how this particular art installation refers to the world of Hootie and the Blowfish.
Yeah, but I've kind of lost all my care for Darius Rucker in the most recent years with his change. But to be fair, if it sells, it sells. I'm just not a fan of his modern day turn of music.
Yeah, Darius Rucker has gone complete full country. But to the credit of Darius Rucker, like you sell, country music is incredibly popular in the United States, and I think it's incredibly popular throughout the world now. So if you want to make some music that's popular with people, I mean, being a country artist, I mean, he's got bills like everybody else.
Well, and here's the weird thing, though, is I was just talking about how I associate them in a very small scale, maybe from like early 90s to early 2000s. More is probably more accurate. Mm-hmm. But I think of him now modern. He got out of that little twilight zone. And the Dave Matthews Band is one of those interesting bands that I know them, and I know their music, like Crash Into Me, Ants Marching. There's a few songs I can think of off the top of my head, but they are not a band that I know that well, like at all. And if they were near, like if I were walking in a grocery store and I was walking past them, I'd have no idea what they look like.
No, I mean, there's one album there's called Something in the Grugrux King, and there's a song called Why I Am off that album, which is absolutely superb. And the only reason I know it is because I used to watch David Letterman's TV show. In fact, I used to watch David Letterman's TV show when I lived in England, and when I moved to the United States, I stopped watching it, but that's beside the point. But he used to run a comedy segment at the beginning of after his monologue that used that track.
Yeah. Well, and I do know that he's from Johannesburg. Mm-hmm. So he's not American, even though his name is Dave Matthews, but I don't know if that's his legal name. I have no clue.
I don't know, but he I think he lives in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, he does. And here's a cool fact, Tim. I get to finally once get somehow to be associated with the person. When I used to work at XM Radio doing support for the radios, they had a special line that all the like celebrities were supposed to call. So like I know Eddie Murphy had XM Radio. And so I never worked that line. I knew it existed. It wasn't in the call center that I was working at. But for some reason, Dave Matthews, producer, what was it, producer or maybe assistant, I don't know, manager, somebody associated with him, did not know they were supposed to call the special line. So guess who got to talk to him about Dave Matthews of Sirius Radio? Joy.
Oh.
And I was like, well, okay. But he lives in Charlottesville? I thought it was Charlottesville.
You could be
I don't know,
right.
he lives somewhere in Virginia. It doesn't matter. He's somewhere in Virginia.
He's a fellow Virginian.
Yes. But yeah, I know them, but I don't know them, if that makes sense, about the Dave Matthews Band.
Yeah, I agree. I've got a lot of their albums, and it sort of melds into a muchness. But apart from that one track that I really do like.
That's the same way Coldplay is for me, too. It's just kind of a mold.
Coldplay is U2, but without the welly of it. You know what I mean? It doesn't quite have the power of U2.
Do you remember that band that was called Snow Patrol that was out for like 5 minutes?
Yeah, Snow Patrol is like U2 light.
Yeah, so it was Coldplay and then Snow Patrol was that. So it went U2, Coldplay, and then Snow Patrol.
Yeah, by the time you get down to Snow Patrol, it's like you just put it on, and it's like, oh, I just fall asleep to this.
Glad I wasn't the only one who thought that then.
No.
Okay, good. Anyway, I don't remember what the song was. What's the next one? No clue what we were talking about. It's gone now.
But there we are. All right, so this one is from 1968. Another one, Cutting Edge. We're really kind of it's the latest top hits here, and this is from the band The Lemon Pipers, and this is Green Tambourine.
Which I do know. When you started to say that, though, I thought you were going to say Buck Cherry, and I was like, that's definitely not from the 60s. I had a moment. Oh, I haven't heard that song in a while. Was there a cover of that song at one point?
Very, very possibly. It sounds like the sort of music that has been covered 50 times.
1,000 times.
I'm sure even in the 60s and 70s when it was out, there was covers.
Well, and it's also used in a lot of like movies, I think, or like TV shows. It's one of those songs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Did the Lemon Pipers or whatever their name is, did they have any other songs?
I don't know. I think maybe this may be a true one-hit wonder from the Lemon Pipers.
I bet if we did, they might be one of those bands from the 60s that like a member died and then they never continued or something too. That's possible.
They could be like the Archies, who had that song "Sugar, Sugar, Honey, Honey," whereas in fact it was just studio players and they just made the name up for the song.
I love that song though. It's a favorite, and it'll be in my head for the next 6 weeks.
It is a good song.
Sorry, Tim, I cut you off, but now it's in my head. I was like, that's a good song, and I'm like, it'll be in my head for the next 6 weeks.
Well, another one like that was the Starland Vocal Band with "Afternoon Delight."
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I was watching Anchorman today. I don't know, have you ever seen Anchorman, Tim?
Do you know, I can honestly say I have never seen Anchorman.
It doesn't matter, but when he's talking to the girl, he says, I fell in love for the first time. They're super awkward, and they're like, the character is supposed to be very eccentric. And they're like, what does falling in love feel like? And he just starts singing Afternoon Delight, and I died. I was just watching that earlier today. It all comes full circle, everyone.
There we are. It all comes back to songs that are about green.
That song, though, the Green Tambourine song, is like, was it short? Was it like a short song?
It's 2 minutes and 24 seconds.
Well, it's not that short then.
No, but I think a lot of songs of that era, of the sort of 60s or 50s in particular, 60s as well, a lot of your pop hits would be 2 minutes or around 2 minutes.
Yeah, I contribute that to why I have a terrible attention span. I have a theory. The reason I suck at watching TV shows and movies or anything longer than 2 to 3 minutes is because of my music. Like I'm such a big music person. I've been like, that's enough. I have enough attention to listen to a song, and then after that, it's gone.
I find my attention span for watching something is around 45 minutes, 50 minutes on the whole. And then I get restless and want to do something else, which is perfect because most of these retro shows that I like are all, well, they're 1 hour, but like 43 minutes with commercial breaks. So by the time you get the version that doesn't have commercial breaks in it, it's about 45 minutes. However, I recently got Peacock just so I could watch classic WWF wrestling. I have watched 3 events, all of which were over 3 hours, and I watched them end to end because I was fascinated with it. But following on from my theory, each of the bouts of wrestling are about 15 minutes tops.
It's like different, like there's different pieces to that. So like I can watch a documentary. I'm a big documentary watcher. I watch documentaries literally nonstop to the point that it drives my husband insane. Like I'm always trying to find a documentary. It could be about anything. It could be about movies. It could be about TV. It could be about music. It could be about true crime. It doesn't matter, Tim. Cults. I learn everything from these documentaries. Probably not all accurate, but I tell myself they are, and it makes me smarter.
Sure.
But I feel like the same reason I can stay on path with them is they like talk about a piece of what's going on and then they switch gears, right? So they talk about like how the cult was developed and then this is how he got members. And then this is how the members, contributed. So like, I feel like it's the same type of thing. And that's why it keeps my attention.
So you think that's where I'm coming from with the wrestling. So I will stick to those bouts, and then when you get to King Kong Bundy versus Hulk Hogan in a steel cage match that's 20 minutes long, my attention can be in that because it wasn't burnt out from the previous ones.
See, we're making science right here. It makes sense. There were so many words that were said in the last 10 minutes that are just, all right. What's the next song?
Okay. So this one actually is it's a Christmas song. So I'm bringing up a Christmas song at the beginning of June, and this is the Vince Guaraldi Trio, and this is Greensleeves from A Charlie Brown Christmas.
Which my husband's name is Charlie, and he's a huge Charlie Brown fan. He actually has a Charlie Brown tattoo on his arm. So I have watched all of the Charlie Brown movies, including the Christmas special many times. Mm-hmm. Every Christmas. And I mean, Greensleeves, though, has like been done more than once, right? Like that's like one of those songs that's like,
it's like a song that goes probably hundreds of years back. It's a very old traditional song.
So I mean, I think it's been re-recorded. But I have heard the Charlie Brown one a lot.
I got the remastered, reissued version of A Charlie Brown Christmas in a Goodwill for $1, and it has the digipack and it has the book. Mm-hmm. And it was talking about in the book how the music of Charlie Brown Christmas introduced like sort of jazz music to a lot of young people, because at the time, in the sort of the 60s when that was out, that kind of jazz was seen as something that certainly your parents was listening to, or it was deemed very old-fashioned, and like people were into like 60s music, Beatles and Rolling Stones and music of that kind of era. And a lot of kids and young people really enjoyed Charlie Brown Christmas and went and got the soundtrack because they liked it so much, or their parents bought it for them because it was Charlie Brown. And they really discovered that they liked jazz music.
I mean, that's awesome, though. It's a really good album. Like, I can see why that would make it popular. It's fun.
It is. It's great. And in the remastered, reissued version, it just sounds so good.
So I did a little bit of research because I was thinking it was supposed to be like, because Greensleeves is like a British folk song. I knew that. It's like 1500's Henry II type way back. So it says Greensleeves is traditionally an English folk song, a broadside ballad by the name of, I am not ever going to try to say whatever that is. Tim could pronounce it for you guys later if he Googles it. There's a lot of words there that I don't know, but it's something Lady Greensleeves.
Okay.
A new Norton ditty of Ye Lady Greensleeves is kind of what it looks like. Was registered by Richard Jones at the London Stationers Company in September of 1580.
Oh. And
the tune is found in several late 16th century, 17th century sources. And then it just goes from there. It says that, let's see here. I'm trying to figure out if there's any like reason it was called that. Ye Lady Greensleeves, Answer to the Donkey, Her Friend by Edward White is another version of it. What are these names? Okay, well, anyway, some lady who had green sleeves is the background of it, but it's been used in Okay, well, and apparently Miss Green Sleeves Lady was a promiscuous woman, and that's why she's got so many different adaptations, I'm guessing. But anyway, there you go. Now you guys know.
There we are. I mean, this. I mean, we are bringing it bang up today. What year did you say this was?
Well, the original was 1580.
There we are, 1580. I mean, I get criticised for only listening to stuff from the 80s. I mean, goodness me, we're talking about things from the 1500s.
A new. What? How do you pronounce new with an e on it at the end of it? Is it just new?
New. I think it's just new.
Okay, a new northern did ye, because it's like Dittye of Ye Lady Green Sleeves.
A ditty.
Was registered.
A new northern ditty of ye oldie ladies or something.
I wouldn't say it like the way Tim said it makes sense. That's not how my brain read it. By Richard Jones. There you go, guys. In the London Stations Company in September of 1580. We really took it home with that one. 17,000 years ago. I didn't do the math. I don't actually think it's 17,000, everyone. Don't come for me, internet. God.
Oh, dear.
All right. I don't know how much time we have left. Tim, how many more songs do you want to do?
Well, I've got one more that I want to close out on. So this one is by a band you may have heard of, or you may not have heard of. You heard of Queen, Joy? That rings a bell?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
I heard there's a Jubilee this weekend for them. Keep seeing stuff. Something about like a gold Jubilee or something. I couldn't help myself. For those who don't know this, the Jubilee is this weekend in England, but when this posts, it's going to be in the future.
It's going to be way after the fact, and you're like, yeah, that was 3-4 weeks ago.
But it's funny at the moment because we keep seeing all the little posters. But anyway.
Anyhow, so yeah, the Jubilee band, Queen, this is from a concert that they did in 1973 at the Golders Green Hippodrome, which I think was a concert venue or nightclub or something like that.
Okay.
And the track that I'm picking out is a track called Ogre Battle, which is an early track of theirs. I believe it's from Queen 2. And the live concert Golders Green, it was a bootleg which existed for many years. I think it was broadcast on the radio and someone taped off the radio. And it was a very well traded bootleg. And in fact, I had a copy of this. And then they came out with a box set in 2016, which had lots of old radio interviews in it, and also had some of these bootlegs which have been doing the rounds. And they finally released the Golders Green Hippodrome show. And it comes from an era of Queen very early. You know, it's like Queen 1, Queen 2 era, when they were very much a progressive rock band in the style of early Genesis. Yes, it's that kind of thing, not the kind of pop rock anthem Queen that most people know. And I like Ogre Battle. Are you familiar with the song Ogre Battle?
I've heard it before. It's not like one that I listen to often, but I've heard it.
Yeah, and I really like that song. And when Queen had their musical in London's West End, We Will Rock You, most of the songs in it were their contemporary hits or hits that people knew. But they did use Ogre Battle, and I was always very pleased like that they had that callback to the very early Queen.
Do you think they're actually talking about an ogre fight? Because it says, like, come to the ogre battle fight or something like that. So, like, a real ogre?
Yeah,
it's a metaphor.
I think it's maybe a metaphor. If you look into the lyrics of Queen, especially their very early lyrics, Freddie Mercury, as you would imagine, was incredibly well read lots of different literature, was into lots of these fantasy universes and stuff like that. And I think he's referencing some of that kind of stuff.
Every time I hear it, it's just very weird to me because all I think of is Shrek, because it's the only ogre I actually know. Mm-hmm. And so I just think of like Shrek in a battle. So I'm like, it's probably because I'm guessing it's an ode to the medieval times, like you're saying. He was into the fantasy. I don't actually think he was an ogre. Everybody, it was a joke, but like it's an ode to because he says something about a piper at one point, medieval times. I get it, and he wrote a lot of music like that. Like remember we took that whole nobody knew what the one when we did the lyrics, and we were talking about different things with his lyrics. It was like name this hard lyrics. There was a lot of like things nobody knew about. Because he has such interesting, diverse lyrics. And he always likes to, in the early, like you're saying, that kind of journey sound they had at the beginning. That makes sense, though. I had never heard it described like that, but you nailed it by just defining it that way, Tim.
Yeah, I have a book by Martin Popoff, which is really good, which goes Queen album by album. And it has a number of like musicians talking about each album. And it's an interesting read because when I first got it, I listened to each Queen album whilst reading the chapters. So it was interesting to hear what they were referencing on there. But a lot of musicians were saying with the early Queen, they were not as big as they are now, and certainly were not as big as they were in their heyday. They were a little bit niche, so you sort of not everybody knew who they were in the early days of Queen 1, Queen 2, Sheer Heart Attack, and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of musicians liked them because they were the music they played was very progressive. And a lot of the musicians in the book say they'd listen to Freddie's lyrics and read his lyrics, and in fact, sometimes they had to look the words up because he was using some words and terms which you don't normally have in normal rock songs. And they said it was an adventure to find out everything that what Freddie was talking about.
Well, and he spent a lot of time reading different things because, like, the one that I know is when we talked about Bohemian Rhapsody, the bulbs of beer. What is that word? Bulbs, the devil.
Beelzebub.
That. Nobody knew what it was. I still don't know how to say it. I went my entire life just like making the sound, but never knowing what I was actually saying. And that was like one of the most popular misheard lyrics, which now I know is some type of demon devil thing.
There we go.
Yeah. Everybody's like, wow, real thrilling stuff here. Another song from 40,000 years ago. All right, Tim. Well, I guess this episode was pretty green.
It was we were going green. Now, even though the episode has just finished and we've been talking about music from the 1500s and the 70s and stuff like that, we're going to close this episode with the first time ever instant album review from an album released in 2022.
What?
So today, I listened to the new Def Leppard album, Diamond Star Halos.
Oh, I knew that was coming out.
Have you heard any of the tracks from it yet?
Yes.
Did you like the tracks that were released before the album came out?
Yes.
Enjoy them because they're not all as good as that.
Oh, you have my hopes up. They were pretty, they weren't great, but they were pretty good. I didn't have like super high hopes, but.
I mean, some of the Def Leppard stuff post Hysteria and Adrenalize and stuff like that, they sort of took a little bit of a different direction from their kind of Mutt Lang produced sound. This album is seen as going back to that sort of Hysteria type sound. But I don't know. I mean, the Hysteria, Pyromania have such a high benchmark. It's hard to have anything that's as good as that. But there's a few good tracks on it. The other problem is there's too many tracks on it. It has like 16 tracks on it.
That's a lot for an album.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think if you're a fan of Def Leppard, I would certainly get it. If you're a casual fan of Def Leppard, I'd maybe listen to it. But if you're expecting something as strong as Hysteria or Pyromania or any of those great Def Leppard songs that you love, I don't think you're going to come back to this.
I had just heard Kick.
Kick is a great track. That is one of the highlights from the album.
Oh, okay. That's the only one I had heard. I'm just being honest with you. And I liked it. So that's what you said. I was like, oh, yeah, that was coming out. Well, I'll just keep listening to Kick and the rest maybe I'll hear eventually.
Like I said, I was a little disappointed. It was bigged up a lot that it was going to be a great thing. And it's okay. It's not like Queen and Paul Rodgers is The Cosmos Rocks. You don't listen to it and then you have a bad taste in your mouth. But you listen to it and you think, no, this is Def Leppard.
I mean, that's fair. They do have a distinct sound, I guess.
And the other thing is that, Joe Elliott is older.
Yeah.
And his voice doesn't have the same Joe Elliott sound. And that's understandable. The chap's probably in his 60s or something at this point. And it would be unrealistic for him to sound like he did on those classic hits. But if with the classic orchestration, the kind of Mutt Lang style production that it has, and not having the full-on Joe Elliott voice, it doesn't quite jive for me.
People are going to think that like we are personally friends with Mutt Lang because I swear he comes up somehow in every episode. Like we've just got him on speed dial.
That is because he is a genius producer. That is why he is Nile Rodgers' genius.
He is. And it's fantastic. So,
but there we are. Anyhow, closing out the episode, bang up to date.
All right. Well, with that, all right. Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
To remind me of another day to